Well, good evening and welcome to the Fostoria Area Chamber of Commerce 2023 Candidate Forum, featuring candidates running for mayor and council at large positions in the city of Fostoria. This evening's event will be recorded and distributed to Chamber and FEDC members, linked on our social media platforms and websites, and aired on FETV at a later date. Let's begin with a few introductions. I will be your host and moderator for today's forum, and my name is Sarah Stevens-Krupp, and I am the Chamber Small Business Director for the Fostoria Area Chamber of Commerce. A special thank you this evening to Fostoria City Schools for allowing us to use the PAC, and to Matt Swarchek for his assistance with sound and lighting. He's the voice in the booth if you were here earlier. Also, thank you to Zach Stumpf of Scanner Media, who is also recording this event this evening as well. The goal of this forum is to introduce you to the candidates running for office prior to the May 2nd primary. Current Mayor Eric Keckler is not seeking re-election after 3 terms in office. Vying for mayor are Don Manell and Elliot Schaefer, who are both here this evening and are seated at the first table. 3 at-large council seats will be open, as Brian Shaver is running for council president unopposed, leaving his seat open. Ed Logsdon is not seeking re-election, and Greg Cassidy's current term in office will end. 4 candidates are seeking to fill the 3 available seats. Greg Cassidy is running again, while the other 3 candidates would be new to council, and they are Brady Hall, Kristen Van Kuren Coaster, and Bob Podak, all who have joined us here this evening. So please help me welcome the candidates and thank them for running for office. All right, we will now proceed with our forum. Candidates were asked to come with a prepared brief opening and closing statement not to exceed 3 minutes. The order of the forum will begin with the mayoral candidates, followed by the city council candidates. Questions asked of the candidates have not been provided to them ahead of time. Questions were submitted by Chamber and FEDC members and compiled by Chamber staff into the questions which will be asked today. The same question will be asked of each candidate, and a time limit for answering will be provided when the question is asked, as well as who will answer the question first. The order of answering each question will move down the table until all candidates have answered the question. Candidates have been seated in alphabetical order. We do have a timer seated in the front row, Renee Smith, President of Fostoria Economic Development Corporation, who will signal each candidate when they have 30 seconds left to answer. When their time concludes, you will hear a bell. We have asked all candidates to wrap their answer when the bell rings. If they continue to speak, after 30 seconds, a second bell will sound and their microphone will be turned off, and we will move to the next candidate. There are no opportunities for rebuttals or candidates to ask questions of one another. Again, we will begin with questions for the mayoral candidates and then move on to council. Are there any questions from the candidates before we begin this evening? Okay. All right, so our very first question, and these will be addressed again to our mayoral candidates. You will have 2 minutes to respond to this question. In the order, we will start with Mr. Manell, and then Mr. Schaefer will have the opportunity. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Let me have you start with your opening statement. Thank you. That's a good order. Please proceed. Yes.
Thank you all for coming, and I also want to thank the Fostoria Chamber of Commerce and the Fostoria City Schools for making this possible. The Collins Dictionary word of the year for 2022 is permacrisis. The word is a portmanteau of permanent and crises. Philosophers have long defined a crisis as a situation that forces an individual or group to a moment of thoughtful critique, to a point where a new path is mapped out in relation to some issue or pressing concerns. When Eric Keckler ran for mayor, he inherited a perma-crisis. And I'm not sure even Eric realized how bad the situation was. The city was under an edict from the US EPA as well as the Ohio EPA to separate its storm sewer from its wastewater, and the city was financially broke. An audit by the state of Ohio placed the city in financial emergency, and Eric has had to manage the city under the shadow of these agencies for his entire term of office. Eric deserves an awful lot of credit for his perseverance, hard work, and steady guidance of a city that today is in much better shape both structurally and financially than when he took office. Under his leadership, we are poised to come out from under these shadows in the foreseeable future. Eric was the right person in the right place at the right time to bring the city of Fostoria back from the brink of disaster. I want to publicly thank Eric for his hard work, leadership, and service to the city. I would not be running for mayor if Eric was running. At the same time, I fully understand why he is burned out. My purpose for running is to continue the good work that Eric began. We cannot afford to go backwards. We cannot afford to deviate from this path until we emerge from fiscal emergency and put the edicts from the EPA behind us. By pursuing this path, we can hopefully prove that the permit crisis created a long-term, necessary, and beneficially corrective direction for the city of Fostoria.
Hello, and thank you, Sarah and Chamber, for allowing us to be here today. Thank you, School District and School of Fostoria. My name is Elliot Schaefer, and I have the great opportunity of being a member of the Fostoria community. The role of the mayor has a significant responsibility for representing the core values of residents of Fostoria, as well as empowering those citizens to succeed. We have some big changes happening in Ohio, and now Fostoria it's time to show the world our heritage, culture, arts, music, natural beauty, and cuisine. We have countless opportunities ahead of us, and I want to reiterate that I am here for you. In public service, there's no room for self-interest. If the question is, what is best for me? That's the wrong question. I try to do the best thing and the right thing. Please vote for me this next election. Thank you, and God bless.
Oh, we're going to stay with the mayoral candidates, and we'll do the council when we move to them. Okay. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Now we're going to do what I attempted to do earlier before I let you do your opening statements. All right. So the first question will be answered first by Mr. Minnell, second by Mr. Schaefer. You will have 2 minutes to give your response. What do you see as the primary role of mayor? What are your goals for the office? And what distinguishes you from the other candidates?
Well, the mayor is the leader of the city and also the leader of the employees of the city. So management is critical, and proper management is a skill that I have. I have years of experience both running the Minnell Milling Company and in other organizations. The finances of the city, I understand. I understand fund accounting, which is different from public accounting for a business. And it's the same accounting that's used in a hospital or in a nonprofit organization. And I've served on many, many of those boards, so I understand it. I think my knowledge, my education, and my experience differentiate me from my opponent.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Schaefer, would you like the question repeated?
Yes, please.
Okay. What do you see as the primary role of mayor? What are your goals for the office? And what distinguishes you from the other candidate?
Okay, thank you. So as I said before, I believe that the role of the mayor of Fostoria is responsible for representing the core values that represent the residents of Fostoria. So in doing so, you would have to communicate with residents, small business owners, and large businesses all together. I kind of look at it as like a triangle. Without all three pieces working together, it won't succeed. And so in doing so, and looking at what skills I have, I've worked with Fortune 50 and Fortune 500 companies, working with CEOs, vice presidents, and I've also worked with small businesses. I worked with people on manufacturing lines and many different types of businesses, from healthcare to pipeline. So I've communicated with these individuals, I've learned their stories, and I've been able to deliver any type of message that they've wanted or required. Can you say the question one more time?
It was, what is the primary role of the mayor? What are your goals for the office? And what distinguishes you from the other candidates?
And then for goals, I would say I'd like to improve the local environment and infrastructure as a whole to improve the quality of life of individuals living in Fostoria.
Okay, thank you. You can keep the microphone. The next question you will answer first. You will have 1 minute to respond.
Okay.
What civic organizations or nonprofits have you been an active member of in recent years? Please describe your role in said organizations, such as volunteer, a board member, etc.
A lot of times when I work with nonprofits, it's not necessarily as a board seat. I've worked with many non-for-profits when creating videos and resources for them. And in doing so, I have to learn a lot about their infrastructure or their structure and their goals as a group. So I have to communicate with them and understand who they are and what their goals are for their people and for the community they're attached to.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bonnell, same question. Would you like that repeated?
Please.
Okay. What civic organizations or nonprofits have you been an active member in recent years? Please describe your role in said organizations, such as volunteer, board member, etc.
Well, I served on the Fostoria Hospital Board for close to 20 years on and off. I was president of that board for many of those years. I handled the transition with the board of the move away from the management association that was managing it to being locally managed to eventually being controlled by ProMedica. I've also been on and off the YMCA board for many, many years. I finished my last year on that board in December. I still serve on several of their committees, and I've been president of that board for many, many years. I've been honored as Volunteer of the Year twice, and I've also received the highest award that they give in Fostoria. So I've been very active in nonprofits throughout my career.
Okay, thank you. The next question you will answer first. You have 1 minute to respond. What experience do you have with employees in large budgets? How are you equipped to handle budgets as large as the city of Fostoria's nearly $20+ million annual budget and nearly 100 employees?
Well, obviously, as president of the Manel Milling Company, our budget is significantly larger than the city of Fostoria's, and our number of employees is significantly larger than the city of Fostoria. So I have managed large budgets. I have managed large numbers of people. I have managed people who are spread out all over in several states, and I know how to lead, and I know how to give responsibility to managers and trust them and rely on them and manage people in general.
Thank you. Mr. Schaefer?
Thank you.
Would you like me to repeat that?
Yes, please.
Okay. What experience do you have with employees and large budgets? How are you equipped to handle budgets as large as the city of Fostoria's $20+ million annual budget and nearly 100 employees?
So in regards to employees, I worked with a company in my past career to where we recruited hundreds of thousands of different employees. And in doing so, you had to learn about their history, collaborate with them, and learn by just breaking down their resumes and communicating with them on a normal basis of, what kind of talents do they have and understanding those skills. So if I were to look at the budget for the mayor, I would rely on someone like a finance director or someone to actually help navigate the actual financial piece of the city's budget. But in managing those people, I would rely on knowledge that they have and then look at what experiences I've had with individuals with those skill sets over the period of time that I've worked with many different people. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
This next question you will answer first.
Oh, thank you.
You will have 1 minute. An ongoing concern within the community is Sunny Farms landfill. We would like to give each candidate the opportunity to express their views on the landfill. You have a minute. Please proceed.
So I understand the need of the landfill, and I understand that the state makes a lot of money off of the landfill and its infrastructure and bringing trash from out of state into this area. We aren't directly in charge of the landfill itself. It's in Loudoun Township, but I do think it has a direct impact on our quality of life, and I think it'd be important to work with the landfill in order to understand, what they're encountering and making sure that they're meeting the standards that both the EPA are requiring and standards that we set ourselves for quality of water, land, and air, and then expressing those things to the landfill so that they know that, this is where we stand and we're not going to budge from living a good quality of life here in Fostoria.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Manel, would you like me to repeat that?
No, I think I have it.
Okay.
Sunny Farm landfill is synonymous with the word permacrisis. It sits right outside the city limits, and the city has absolutely no authority over any of its activities. So the first rule is to know your enemy. Sunny Farms landfill, aka Wind Waste Innovations, is a wholly owned subsidiary of Wheelabrator Technologies, Inc., a member of the Norcan Group, all owned by Macquarie Infrastructure Partners, a division of Macquarie Group of Sydney, Australia. Why all the names and layers of corporations? This is an attempt to protect the true owners from liability claims. However, at the end of the day, you can put a lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. Who is the Macquarie Group? They are one of the largest investment funds in the world with assets of multi-billions of dollars. They are also the same investment group that signed the 75-year lease with the state of Indiana to operate the Indiana Turnpike, only to declare bankruptcy 8 years later as the investment was not working out as planned. What would happen if they declared bankruptcy at Sunny Farms landfill? Ottawa Sandusky Seneca County Solid Waste District would be stuck with managing the landfill for the remainder of its life. Think about that for a minute. Do they have the expertise, the knowledge, the relationships, the fortitude, or could they find an operator to come in and manage it profitably going forward? Perhaps, but anyone coming in would want to do all sorts of environmental studies and would also want to be indemnified from all liabilities.
Oh, Mr. Manel, we're going to have to ask you to stop. You've exceeded your time. Sorry. Okay. The next question, you can hold on to the microphone because you will be answering first. All right. This question, you will also have a minute to answer. Another ongoing concern in Fostoria has been the continued overtime in the police and fire, with over 80% of our general fund going to our safety forces. What is your plan to help mitigate the ongoing overtime within these departments?
That's a tough question because all of those departments are under union contracts and you have to work within the union contracts and understand them and understand how you can work with them. One of the ways to do it is to hire additional people, which also costs money, but in the long term may save money from all of the overtime. The other thing is to understand, are they creating the overtime to work overtime or not? I think we're going through a generational change where that could change because the younger workforce does not want to work all the overtime that the older workforce does. But it will take some understanding and study and working with the chiefs and the heads of those departments to better understand that entire process.
Thank you. Mr. Schaefer, same question. Would you like that repeated?
Yes, please.
Okay. Another ongoing concern in Fostoria has been the continued overtime in the police and fire, with over 80% of our general fund going to our safety forces. What is your plan to help mitigate the ongoing overtime within these departments?
Well, I would communicate to the chief of both fire and police departments and create a strategy together and work with them to understand what their needs are. And if there is room in their budget to eliminate any costs, we'll work together to try to solve those problems. And I can't be expected to know what their departments need when they're the professionals and they have the idea of what their needs are.
Okay, thank you. You will answer this next question first, Mr. Schaefer. This one, you also have 1 minute to respond. What role do you believe city government plays in economic development?
I think it's an important role. Like I said, it's like a triangle. We have our citizens, we have small businesses and large businesses. And as an analogy, as a photographer, you have your aperture, you have your focus, and then you have your shutter speed. And you want to make sure that all of those things are working together in order to get a good image and a good picture of what you want. And for us, I think all of those things need to work together in order to create a good picture of what Fostoria can be. And I think it'll take a good mayor to listen and to understand what those needs are from small businesses, from large businesses, and from citizens as a whole to work together to create a vision for Fostoria.
Thank you. Mr. Manel, what role do you believe city government plays in economic development? You have 1 minute.
I think this is a perfect example of public-private partnerships where the city can work with FEDC and with the Chamber of Commerce to work on attracting businesses to the city and to develop the city internally. It takes both sides to make things happen, and there are advantages to working with the partnerships because they can do things that the city cannot do, and the city can do things that they cannot do. So I think working hand in hand in a public-private partnership with each is critical to economic development. And by the way, I'd say both organizations, the Chamber and FEDC, have been doing a great job for the city of Fostoria, and that will continue to happen if I am elected mayor.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Manel, you will answer the next question first. You will have 1 minute to respond. What, in your opinion, does Fostoria need to accomplish to get out of fiscal emergency? And do you have an estimated time frame for said plan?
Well, there are 3 reasons that we're in economic emergency currently today. They're different from when we went in initially. The first reason is that we do not have a fiscal officer in the city of Fostoria, which is a requirement. The second is that we do not have the reserves that a city is required to have to get out of economic development. And the third is that City Council voted unanimously not to increase the water rates for the citizens of Fostoria to the degree that they needed to be raised to support the new sewer project that the money has been spent on and pay off the debt. So we cannot get out of fiscal emergency this calendar year. We'll have trouble getting out next year, but it is possible if we get everything accomplished to get out probably by the end of next year or the beginning of the following year.
Thank you. Mr. Schaefer, same question.
I'm going to agree. It's going to take over a year to get us out of fiscal emergency. I think we need to take a deep look at our water and waste and all of those other budgets that we have across the board. We may have some gaps that we can eliminate, or sorry, I guess, we have some areas that we could look at cost savings, I would say. And if we do that, then I believe that we can get out of fiscal emergency. It's just going to take time, and it's going to take a lot of good communication with the state and understanding of where they want us to go with our budgets.
Okay, thank you. This next question you will answer first, and you have 1 minute to answer. Social media is a large component of today's society, and many here today are active on social media platforms. While this is a great tool, it can also be an incredibly inaccurate resource. What are the most important steps the city can take to enhance its relationship and communication with its citizens?
So I'm glad you asked this question. Having background in digital media and communications, that's my degree from the University of Findlay. I have a lot of background in utilizing social media and interacting with individuals across the board. So what I would say is asking engaging questions, working with the community to understand their needs, and figuring out where do we see gaps? What kind of things do citizens want to see? And then asking those questions to get more involvement from the community. Right now, it's a great time to be involved. So the more people we can get that are involved in the community and we can utilize social media for that, that'd be great. But in that same note, with social media, there's a lot of influences that are affecting a number of different people, and parents and any family members need to be aware that, whatever you consume goes into your brain, whether you're reading it or learning it. Those things are vitally important to protect your mind and make sure that you're getting the right information. So false information is available everywhere, unfortunately, but we'll do our due diligence to make sure that we get people correct information that is valid.
Thank you. Mr. Manel, would you like me to repeat the question?
I'm good.
Okay.
I think the city can do a better job of communicating both on its own webpage and on its Facebook page. I believe that we could put out a quarterly newsletter that would tell you what we've accomplished in the last quarter and what we're looking to accomplish in the next quarter. I think just putting the information out there is going to be critical. The other thing that we have to do is we have to change the culture in the city so that when a citizen calls City Hall, they get an answer or they get a call back within 24 hours. That's not social media, that's just common courtesy.
Thank you. This next question you will answer first, and you both will have a minute to answer. If someone came to you with a proposal on a new piece of public infrastructure in our city, a road, a bridge, or etc., how would you evaluate whether that project was worth implementing? Would you like me to repeat that?
What was the last part of that?
Okay. I'll start over from the beginning. If someone came to you with a proposal on a new piece of public infrastructure in our city, for example, a road or a bridge, how would you evaluate whether that project was worth implementing?
Well, I'd do an economic analysis on it and evaluate the pros and cons as well as the cost and the payback. I think that all of our projects could be evaluated, and we should have a list of projects and we should prioritize those projects. So if somebody brought us a project and it made a lot of sense and it proved to be an economically viable project, we'd absolutely look at it and go forward with it. If it turned out to be something like, a bridge over a river that doesn't exist, there's no way we're going to look at it. Common sense prevails.
Thank you. Mr. Schaefer.
Yeah.
Yes. If someone came to you with a proposal on a new piece of public infrastructure in our city, for example, a road or a bridge, how would you evaluate whether that project was worth implementing?
Well, I would look at current infrastructure and see what we have in place. I would look at best practices, looking at our neighboring cities that have similar instances and see what their costs are based on what they're buying and purchasing, and asking questions from people who are doing those sort of things. So with that, I would say we would have to look at a cost-benefit analysis and then decide if it's actually a viable resource that is needed for citizens. And if it's not, we wouldn't go forward with it. I would talk to engineers and see if it was a practical reason to have something like that. And if it is, yeah, we'll go with it. And if it isn't, we wouldn't.
Okay, thank you. That is the last of our questions that we compiled from ones that were submitted. So at this time, we will move into closing statements. Mr. Manel gave his opening statement first, so Mr. Shaver, we will allow you to give your closing statement first.
So I have a little segment here that was from Charles Foster that I would like to read. It says, "When we start out in life, we hardly know what we are good for. We must sometimes make repeated attempts before we succeed. Not unfrequently, we fail because we lack one necessary quality: pluck. To gain much wealth by opposing your neighbor is not success. I know a man in this city who has gained $200,000 or $300,000 by so doing, and I would rather be the humblest hod carrier in town than that man. Every one of you young men should consider an occupation in your life that you can follow. And Another very important question for you is to look into politics. Some people think that politics are corrupt, and that it's not worth your while. And it's not worth your while to make the investigation. But I can tell you that they are the best thing in this country, and the true politician fills a high position as a preacher. Politics are all right, but the men who meddle with them are not always all right. The reason why politics have become so degraded is because our preachers do not go to the caucuses in elections. This is the principal reason why we do not have better politics. So on that note, I want to thank you all for having me here today. Again, thank you, Chamber, and thank you, Fostoria City Schools. And I would like you all to vote for Elliott Schaefer in this next coming election. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Mr. Manel.
In closing, I want to again thank Eric Heckler for all his hard work and effort on behalf of the city, not only as mayor, but like his father before him, for his career. As I said before, Eric was the right person in the right place at the right time to lead the city out of a permacrisis. The proof of that is his capstone effort, which will be the new splash pad to be constructed this summer at City Park. I volunteered to work with Eric on fundraising for this community project. I made the first pledge, I wrote the first check. I will not ask others to contribute unless I believe in the project and make an early contribution. My management style is much the same. I will never ask somebody to do something that I would not be willing to do myself. Fostoria has always been a generous and giving community. I discovered this when I was chairman of the United Way campaign drive many years ago. In the 40-plus years that I've been back in Fostoria, I have served on various boards and committees and worked in my own way to make Fostoria a better community. There is still work to be done, and I, as mayor, would like to lead those efforts and believe I could do so effectively. There are three kinds of people in this world. There are the doers who make things happen, there are the observers who watch things happen, and there are the clueless who don't know what happened. I am a doer, and as such, humbly request your vote to be the next mayor of Fostoria. I want to thank you for your interest and your passion for our wonderful city. May God bless each and every one of you, and thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you. Let's show a round of applause for the Mayoral Candidates. Okay, so now we will move into our City Council at-large positions. So we will go ahead and we will begin with your opening statements. Mr. Cassidy, we will start with you, and we will move our way down the table.
Thank you for hosting this forum and my invitation to participate. I also want to thank all the citizens for their interest and attendance here, as well as those viewing the forum online. My name is Greg Cassidy. Many of you know me from St. Wendland and Fostoria as the White Owl. That's a whole story in itself. I was born in 1952 and raised in Fostoria. I'm a 1970 graduate of St. Wendland High School and Tiffany University. I lived in Findlay and then Van Buren from 1978 to 2015. I moved back to Fostoria in 2015. I've spent my life in transportation, warehousing, and logistics. I've been actively involved in the startup of several highly successful companies involved in trucking and warehousing. In 1980, Findlay Truck Line hired me as Vice President of Sales. I later became president, ultimately purchased the company. Findlay Truck Line's been in business since 1931. I haven't been with the company quite that long, obviously, but I am the fifth owner. Fostoria's always been a terrific community to live and work in. I could not have been raised in a nicer community. The thing that I learned and experienced growing up here, those things have contributed to who I am. I'm fully aware that on occasion that my passion for this community overrides my political correctness. My critics are much more than ready to point that out. I know what Fostoria was like during the great years. My dream is to witness the rebirth of the Fostoria as it once was. Many of you from my generation know what I'm talking about. Many of you from your more recent generations have heard stories from your parents and grandparents about the Fostoria of a more prosperous time. Upon returning home, I began attending council meetings, and coming from a business background, felt that I wanted to get more involved. This applies to all of us. Giving back to our community is not an option, but rather an obligation. I'm going to repeat that again because I've got a real belief in this. Giving back to our community is not an option, but an obligation. I've always been guided by the question, is it good for Fostoria? My decisions on how I vote in council chambers is guided by this. What do I stand for? Public safety is number one. I'm 100% behind both fire and police. We should be very proud of our safety forces. Their training and professionalism contributes to Fostoria being a very safe place to live. I've been criticized for my no vote regarding a formal position opposing the Sunny Farm landfill. I oppose the wording of legislation that was poorly drafted. It was not time sensitive, meaning an emergency vote was not necessary. We had the time for a more definitive piece of legislation to be drafted, and that's why I voted no. If you examine the document prepared by the Seneca County, you'd see what I mean. I'm opposed to any further expansion of the landfill, but I'm here to acknowledge that it's there. We have very little control.
I'm sorry, Mr. Cassidy, you've exceeded your time. Can you pass the microphone to Mr. Hall, please? Thank you.
I'd like to thank Sarah, Renee for putting this on tonight, and Fostoria City Schools for hosting us. Thank you for my invite as well. My name is Braden Hall, and I'm running for an at-large seat on City Council. I'm asking for your vote because I know I can help continue the forward progress of Fostoria. A little bit about myself. My education background includes a 4-year degree from Ashland University, as well as an MBA from BGSU. My work history includes positions here in town at Manel Milling in customer service as well as sales. Both of those positions involve customer-first mentalities, and I will carry that through with me if elected as City Council as citizen first. I've also gained valuable experience serving on various boards within the city, such as the United Way, Colbush Memorial Library, and the YMCA. On all of those boards, I have worked with many different people, many different backgrounds, and that has really been a great experience for me growing as an individual. Also working on those boards, I've been able to see firsthand the wonderful things we can accomplish as we work together towards a common goal. If elected, I will look for opportunities to support downtown growth as well as other local businesses. I will continue to support our first responders and keeping our city streets safe. And I will also prioritize updates on city infrastructure, including water, sewer, storm and sewer, and then also city streets. I believe in this town, the people that reside here, and also the businesses that chose to operate here. I chose Fostoria as my home, and I hope you will choose to cast a ballot for Braden Hall, Fostoria City Council at large.
Thank you. Ms. Coaster.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kristen Van Kuren Coaster. I'm grateful for the opportunity to join all of you this evening as we consider how we can all best support Fostoria moving forward. I know over the years that many individuals have put forth tremendous time and effort into Fostoria, and I'm here this evening seeking the opportunity to do the same through the role of City Council. To give you a little background on myself, I grew up here in Fostoria and honestly never envisioned myself leaving. But upon graduating from St. Wendelin, I left to attend college at the University of Dayton, followed by the University of Toledo, where I immediately began teaching. During the years that followed, while I did not live in Fostoria, I was home frequently to visit my family and to participate in local activities and events, and always felt a contentment when I was home. 3 years ago, I returned to Fostoria to support my mom during her battle with leukemia. Shortly after she passed, my husband, Matt, and I decided to relocate back to Fostoria permanently. Since then, we have thoroughly enjoyed our time in Fostoria by not only participating in local events and activities, but by investing in the community as we are in the process of opening up our own small business, Calico Charlie's Candy and More. In addition to working on the opening of Calico Charlie's, I'm continuing to work in the field of education as I am currently an administrator at Perrysburg Schools. My professional background includes a focus on special education and assistive technology, as I believe strongly in equity and how to support each individual in reaching his or her greatest potential. Additionally, I serve on several committees within the state and Northwest Ohio that focus on our youth and inclusivity. For example, I'm on the steering committee for Wood County Play, which builds inclusive playgrounds for all ages, and I serve on the advisory board at Owens Community College. Those experiences have led me to feel strongly about engaging and supporting our youth. Cliche as it sounds, they are our future, and it's our job as adults to help them reach their fullest potential. These last 28 years have taught me a tremendous amount about the importance of collaboration and open communication in building strong partnerships for improved outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Podak.
I'd like to thank the Chamber and FEDC for this opportunity to speak and to share a little bit about myself. And I too want to thank Eric for his service, not only as mayor, but for all the other jobs that you had over the years with the city. And I also want to thank the citizens of Fostoria for supporting the city. If it wouldn't be for them working and tax dollars, we wouldn't have anything. And then there's the city employees, as well as, you know, the fire and police. You know, they're out there every day. They were on county line digging today. So those guys are in the trenches, as they say. So I'm going to take you back a little bit in the trenches myself. Many of you know me. However, I'm new to the Reno city government, and I am seeking a position as council at large. I humbly ask you to vote for me on May 3rd. Allow me to provide a bit of background for those who are new to Bob Podak. I was born and raised just north of Bascom on a dairy farm, the oldest of 7. And anyone who's raised on a farm knows as soon as you're big enough to go to work, you go to work. I started doing chores, feeding calves, and there was always pitchfork work to be done, as well as guiding my younger brothers and sisters. I was active in 4-H, junior leadership, FFA, and the junior fair board. I actually probably have one thing over on anybody up here. I attended a one-room school at St. Andrews Liberty from the 1st through the 6th grade. And I don't mean one room of a school, I mean a one-room school for all 8 grade levels. So you see, I understand diversity and inclusion already. Completing grades 7 through 12 at Lakota High School, I graduated in 1973. I went on and received a degree in agribusiness from Owens Community College. I married my wife Peg in 1976 and lived in rural Old Fort and managed the elevator and farm supply there for 7 years, and then eventually ended up moving on to positions in southern Michigan and Payne, Ohio. Wanting to settle back in Fostoria, in 1983 we bought a house just north of town and chose to enroll our children in St. Wendelin. I started working for a financial design agency in Fostoria and remained committed to serving the insurance needs of the community and beyond for 27 years now. accumulating into having the privilege and to help many whom I consider friends today with investments and Medicare made simple. We eventually bought Fostoria Laundromat and Side Door Ice Cream, and we sold that in 2000 after Peg died. I remember Fostoria with Airfoil, Honeywell, Atlas, Great Scott, Foodtown. I've been a member of the Fostoria Athletic Boosters, and I'm a member of St. Wendland Athletic Boosters. I announced ball games for over 11 years there and ran the message board at the high school. Just remember one word: ACT. Accountability, commitment, and transparency. That's where we need to go.
Thank you. All right, we will move into our questions, and much like we did with the mayoral candidates, we're going to start in alphabetical order. So, Mr. Cassidy, you will answer the first question first. The second question, Mr. Hall will answer first, but we'll still move it down the table. I'll let you know when you are up to answer. They have microphones. Okay. All right, so the first question, Mr. Cassidy, you will answer this one first. You have 2 minutes to respond. What do you see as your primary role of City Council? What are your goals for the office, and what distinguishes you from the other candidates?
My primary goal on City Council is basically to help manage the city, approve legislation that involves the expenditure of money, ordinances to control the behavior of the city, basically. I'm guided by one basic premise, and I constantly repeat it. It's a passion for me. Is it good for Fostoria? My primary role on council is to pass legislation, and every time I cast a vote, it boils down to one simple question: is it good for Fostoria? And as a follow-up to that, is it going to be good for Fostoria tomorrow, next week, next year? But my primary goal is to serve the public, address issues that are brought to me, run interference sometimes between private citizens on issues and the administration, review legislation, act on legislation, and support this community.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hall, same question. Would you like me to repeat it? Okay. What do you see as the primary role of City Council? What are your goals for the office, and what distinguishes you from other candidates?
The primary role of City Council is to do what's best for the city and its constituents. Part of that is communicating to the mayor's office, law director, safety service director, police, fire chief, etc. Also, being part of the City Council, you have the opportunity to be part of a committee where you can pass further ordinances and get more involved. But I think the biggest role of City Council is transparency. It is very important the citizens of Fostoria know what is going on, and that is communicated to them in a clear fashion. Some goals I have for office: I would like to see improvements in city infrastructure, like I said in my introduction, growth in business as well as local business as well as downtown growth, and then continue to support safety services and keeping our city streets safe. What sets me apart as a candidate, I really think me being a young man is a huge positive. I plan on being a part of this community for a number of years, and I have a lot of plans to get more involved as well. I'm also a go-getter, and I don't mind getting my hands dirty with some tough choices.
Thank you. Ms. Coaster, same question. Would you like that repeated? Okay.
I see the role of City Council to work on behalf and in collaboration with the citizens of Fostoria, along with the local officials, to build strong partnerships to continue to support the city of Fostoria in their growth. My goals for seeking this position would be to increase the engagement with our youth. Obviously, being in the education field, I feel very strongly about that. And improved communication only helps and it moves us forward to improve outcomes.
Mr. Podak, would you like that repeated?
Sure, it's been a while.
Okay, no problem. What do you see as the primary role of City Council? What are your goals for the office, and what distinguishes you from other candidates?
The primary role is to really represent the citizens. The next one after that's going to be to be part of the legislative body that passes ordinances, updates them, listens to the mayor, safety service director. You also have to work with all the different employee organizations, the safety services, as well as the water, sewer, street departments. I think the biggest thing that I've seen from attending meetings for the last couple of years is that we have way too many things that come to the city council that are an emergency. And basically it's emergency on their part that they have to do due to some lack of planning on someone's part. And I'd like to eliminate that and get a little more accountability. I understand under the fiscal emergency, a lot of things come down from the state at the last minute, but there's a lot of other things that seem to show up at the last minute that should be read 3 times, should be discussed, and it should be transparent to the community so that the information's out there.
Thank you. The next question, you will all have 1 minute to answer, and the first person up to answer this will be Mr. Hall. We'll move down the table and end with Mr. Cassidy. The question is as follows. What civic organizations or nonprofits have you been an active member of in recent years? Please describe your role in said organizations, such as volunteer, board member, etc.
I touched on this on my introduction as well. 3 years ago, I joined the United Way. I've been on the board member ever since, as well as a volunteer in about anything that they need me for. As well as the United Way, I recently joined the board of the YMCA, as well as the Colbish Memorial Library. I'm also on the board there. And the great thing about working on the boards, everyone has a different background. Everyone brings something different to the table. Similar to City Council, you all have to work together as a team, and I really think that has been a valuable experience for me.
Thank you. Ms. Coaster, same question. Would you like us to repeat that for you? Okay.
I've served on a variety of boards, including the Toledo Area Association for the Education of Young Children, president, librarian, vice president. Currently, I'm actively involved in Wood County Plays, again, which part of the steering committee that builds inclusive playgrounds in Northwest Ohio. In work, I am on a volunteer board called the CQ Community, Cultural Intelligence, focusing on diverse learners. And then I've done children's activities as a volunteer on Heritage Rally Days with the mini St. Wendelin Festival and those kind of things.
Thank you. Mr. Podak, would you like that repeated? Okay.
At the current time, I'm a member of the Seneca County Republican Central Committee. I'm a Rotary member as well as a Rotary trustee member. In the past, I was a member of the Fostoria Athletic Boosters and also volunteered to work at St. Wendelin concession stands, the announcing music, basketball games, and football games for many years. My roots are in the community. I've been here for 29 years. I can honestly say that after my wife died in 2009, I lost my focus a little bit. Or I probably would have been a member of a lot of these other boards, but when you try and get through life and try and figure out what's going to be going on next, and you've got 3 kids who are adults, but you're still raising them, life takes some interesting twists.
Thank you. Mr. Cassidy, would you like the question repeated?
Some of my involvement includes I'm on the Parish Finance Council at St. Wendland, been very active at St. Wendland Parish. I don't actively belong to any of the service clubs. I'm 71 years old. I moved back, just not gotten involved in it. I do a lot of things behind the scenes as far as financial support to some of the organizations and provide support for some charitable organizations with use of some of my semi-trailers and some of my logistics wear for all.
Thank you. The next question, you will all be given 1 minute to answer. The first to answer this question will be Ms. Coaster, followed by Mr. Podak, then Mr. Cassidy, then Mr. Hall. All right, this one is a little long, so bear with me. City Council must render decisions regarding the implementation of policies or programs that may be somewhat difficult. As a member of council, there may be instances when you personally disagree with something or know the decision will be unpopular, but it is necessary for the greater good of the community. Do you feel you can separate personal opinions and possible personal conflict of interests and make unpopular decisions for the benefit of the community? Please elaborate as to why you do or do not feel that you may accomplish this.
Thank you. I would say not to keep referring to the field of education, but having served in the classroom and now as an administrator for the last 28 years, a big part of my job is doing that. So it's really important to be able to separate, and sometimes it's hard to say no, but it's very important to look at the facts and all the information and then make determinations based on that and kind of get out of your own way. It's hard, but it's necessary.
Thank you. Mr. Podak, would you like me to repeat any part
No,
of that?
it's fine.
Okay.
That is one of the tough parts. And honestly, I have to go back and draw on what I've learned in the past in management when I had over 40 employees and managed over $9 million of sales. And then being a family business owner, you don't always get what you want yourself, but you have to be true to yourself, you need to be true to God, and you need to be upfront and honest. And for me to sit here and tell you that sometime my personal opinion might get in the way, probably will. But that's just who Bob Podak is. But I think I've got it reined in pretty well.
Thank you. Mr. Cassidy.
On council is like anything else really that we encounter in life. You have to make decisions. I've always been an advocate of making a decision, not burying my head in the sand, but making a decision. I've always been able to, in business, separate my personal feelings from business feelings. I used to preside over a labor group in Columbus and was forced to make some pretty tough decisions periodically as far as what my heart told me versus what the right thing to do was. And I always tried to do the right thing, and I want to be able to look myself in the mirror at the end of the day or the beginning of a new day and know that I've tried to do the right thing for the right reasons. I'm not afraid to make tough decisions. I've exhibited that throughout my whole working career, and I've made some tough decisions sitting on city council representing all of you. And I continue to do that. And it boils down to the same thing I keep harping on, and you're probably tired of hearing it, but is it good for Fostoria? And if it is good for Fostoria, and it's going to be good for Fostoria, it's pretty easy to go ahead and make the tough decision and move on.
Thank you. Mr. Hall, would you like that question repeated? Okay. As a member of council, there may be instances when you personally disagree with something or know the decision will be unpopular, but it is necessary for the greater good of the community. Do you feel you can separate personal opinions and possible personal conflict of interest and make unpopular decisions for the benefit of the community? Please elaborate as to why you do or do not feel you can accomplish this.
When it comes to conflicts of interest, I think the city of Fostoria has learned some hard lessons in the past, and I think we're past them and we've grown from them. But in the end, you got to do what's best for the community. All of us up here, all of us on city council, we want what's best for the community. And that, to be able to do that, you have to put personal issues aside. And this I have done with my work experience and my experience working on various boards.
Okay, thank you. The next question, you will also have 1 minute to respond. This time we will start with Mr. Podak, will answer first, then Mr. Cassidy, Mr. Hall, and Ms. Coaster. What are some steps the city can take to enhance its relationship and external communication with its citizens?
Well, I think we've done some. Digital communication, Facebook. We need to get the pages of the Fostoria itself updated. People always want more information. They're looking for information. If they can't find it, then they tend to get mad. I think just to be accountable, to get the information out there as soon as possible, and to make that commitment to make sure it's transparent. Like I said before, I think a lot of things could be done, and I commend Mr. Cassidy when he said he voted on the landfill issue. He felt that there was a better way to do it, and it should take 3 readings. I definitely agree. Many things should take 3 readings. That way the public has a better understanding and opportunity to hear what's going on in the city of Fostoria.
Thank you. Mr. Cassidy, would you like the question repeated? Okay. What are some steps the city can take to enhance its relationship and external communication with the citizens? Okay. What are some steps the city can take to enhance its relationship and external communication with its citizens?
Out by getting me, I probably should break down and buy a set of hearing aids. Steps we need to take, I think that it was touched on earlier. I firmly support the idea that we have to enhance our customer service, if you want to call it that, in Fostoria. When people make inquiries, have issues, and contact the city building, we're going to have to come up with a system to better address problems on a timely basis for people. I firmly believe that we need to address the calls as quickly as possible, and I firmly believe in a live person talking to the citizens, not just leaving voicemail and hoping somebody will call me back, not just sending an email and hoping somebody will respond to it. It seems to be one of the issues that I deal with more as a councilman than any other. I firmly believe in transparency. I believe we need to be honest. And in our dealings with you, we work for you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hall, same question, and would you like me to repeat it? Okay. What are some steps the city can take to enhance its relationship and external communication with the citizens?
First step involves a change of culture, starting from the top down. That starts in the mayor's office and then works its way through all the departments that prioritizes responses in a timely manner. In regards to external communication, social media as well as the website should be upgraded and have active participants taking part in that. And I also like the idea that Don brought up about a newsletter. The citizens should have either mailed or emailed or whatever, should be able to know what's going on in the town and then also know what's in the works as well.
Thank you. Ms. Coaster, same question. Would you like it repeated? What are some steps the city can take to enhance its relationship and external communication with the citizens?
As has already been mentioned, I totally agree. You can make so much headway by just returning phone calls, returning emails, responding quickly to questions being asked. Open and honest communication is key, especially when you're talking city government. I say to people I work with, I don't want to be blindsided and I don't want to blindside you. So the more open and honest we are, the more trust we garner between one another, and in turn, that makes us much more effective.
Thank you. All right, the next question will be answered first by Mr. Cassidy, and you all will have 1 minute to respond. How do you plan to improve internal conversations within the city? For example, between council and the finance and law director, who will now report to council.
I think we got the things in place to communicate with the law director, finance director. I want them more engaged in the arena, in city council, as well as department heads. I think that it's important that we have more conversation with the people that are involved in running the city. We have the mayor, we have the safety service director, and they make a pretty big contribution. And I think we need to include more from the law director and the finance director. Probably more in particular with the finance director. It's been a hit and miss thing, so I think we just use the tools we have.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hall, same question. Would you like me to repeat it? Okay. How do you plan to improve internal communications within the city? For example, between council and the finance and law directors who will now report to council.
I think it's important to be active on the committees that you're a part of, as well as have on-time reporting from all the departments that are present at city council meetings. But not only in city council meetings, those city council should be continuously updated with what's going on in the different departments. And then if necessary, I think more executive sessions might be necessary to discuss further matters more in depth.
Thank you. Ms. Coaster, same question. Would you like me to repeat it?
I'm going to kind of piggyback off of what I said previously. I think, again, it goes back to very open, honest communication, being very transparent in discussions. I think it is very important to have all of the relevant parties together when having some discussions. I think we've learned like little sidebar conversations really never help anyone. So I think it's really important to make sure that all the relevant parties are there to all support being on the same page or at least having the same information.
Thank you. Mr. Podak, would you like the question repeated?
Please.
Okay. How do you plan to improve internal communications within the city? For example, between council and the finance and law directors who now report to council.
Well, it's been a bit of a shock for council that change has taken place. But at the same time, I think it's going to have to be a rally the troops kind of a issue. I think that when you go to a finance meeting of the finance committee, it lasts for 10 minutes. A lot of times nothing goes on. If you're part of the public and sitting there waiting on find out something important, you don't find anything out. The idea of a newsletter sounds amazing to me. Getting the website updated. I just think everybody's going to have to work together because we can't just shut down the city and go home if we don't agree. Somehow we got to figure out how to agree and go on. And that's something that I'm looking forward to.
Okay, thank you. This is our last question before closing statements. You all will have 1 minute to answer. First up to answer will be Mr. Hall, followed by Ms. Coaster, Mr. Podak, and then lastly, Mr. Cassidy. An ongoing concern within the community is Sunny Farms landfill. We would like to give each candidate the opportunity to express their views on the landfill. You have 1 minute, Mr. Hall.
As the largest municipality closest to the landfill, the city of Fostoria and its residents have a strong voice we need to use in order to stop the expansion of the landfill. We need to voice our disapproval to the county commissioners, as well as the Ohio EPA and the Joint Solid Waste District. I, for one, am tired of the Seneca County and our community being a dumping ground for out-of-state trash.
Thank you. Ms. Coaster, would you like the question repeated?
No, thank you. I think it's important that we continue to voice our concerns. It's important that we continue to ask questions. It's important that we continue to be a squeaky wheel and not go quietly.
Thank you. Mr. Podak, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I got it.
Okay.
I don't call it Sunny Farms landfill. There's nothing sunny about it. It's the dump. We all see it. Half the time we smell it. Our water comes within 500 feet of where the landfill is, and then we pump it into the reservoirs, and that's what we get. Our city services have done an amazing job to keep that water and get it straightened out. It's good now. I've complained about it for a couple years. But at the same time, that's not enough, just me. I go to Seneca County Board of Health meetings, and I don't believe I've seen more than 1 or 2 city council members there at any one time. Mr. Logston is a member. But it's not going to go away, whether it closes at some point or not. It's going to be there, and we're going to have to deal with it. So the sooner we figure that out, and the sooner we all stick together as one voice, the sooner we can get something done, because the EPA gets paid by them. So what's the chances of them doing what we want them to do for Fostoria and the community?
Thank you. All right, we will now move into closing statements. And I'm sorry, did I skip? I'm sorry, Mr. Cassidy, my apologies. I did not mean to skip you. Would you like the question repeated? Sure. An ongoing concern within the community is Sunny Farms landfill. We would like to give each candidate the opportunity to express their views on the landfill. You have 1 minute.
I think I started out my opening statement talking about the landfill. I already explained why I voted no on that one piece of legislation. The landfill's not going to go away. I'm not a supporter of the landfill. I never have been. But one thing we got to keep in mind is we've got to foster some type of a relationship so that they don't find some way of abandoning that at some point and leaving that in Seneca County. Two things happen. The revenue that comes to the solid waste district will cease if that happens. And on the other side of the coin, we will see tons of money being expended to keep the landfill contained, maintained. The worst thing that can happen is that place shuts down. I'm sorry, but the fact of the matter is, you shut that down and you're going to see a variety of problems you've never dreamed of. So we walk a fine line. We do what we can with elected officials in Washington and Columbus to try and contain and maintain some type of relationship and keep them in check.
Thank you. All right, now we'll move into closing statements. We're going to go in reverse order. We're going to start with Mr. Podak, and we'll work this way down the table. Reminder, you have a maximum of 3 minutes.
I just want you to remember one thing. We have to work together, whether it's on council, on businesses to bring them into town, whether it's on the St. Wellen Festival downtown, whether it's the Latino Festival, whether it's the Glass Festival. Everybody needs to work together to make the city better. But I still go back to the acronym that we have to have accountability, commitment, and transparency. And if we don't do that as a city, how can we expect the citizens to support us? And how do we expect the businesses to come in and thrive here? I've been in sales for 33 years, and you have to call people back. You have to set appointments. You have to follow through. You have to help them when they have a problem. You can't just ignore them. You can't wait 3 days to call them back. And if you're not the person that they need to talk to, you need to get them to the right person. Being a business manager and a small business owner, I bring that experience to the table. Over the last 2 years, I've been engaged and attended city council meetings, township meetings, county board of health meetings. One of the primary topics that I've always brought up is our water. If you talk to anybody, I don't want to see the landfill shut down either, but we need some kind of control, because all the things that anyone else has said will happen. But the other thing that's going to happen is that at some point in time, they all leak. It's just a matter of when. And our water comes from there. So I don't care if it's $40 million, if it's 20 years. We need to have an alternative plan to make sure that we deserve, in this day and age, in the city of Fostoria, good, healthy water. It's a basic part of life. With that, I appreciate this opportunity. I appreciate the fact that we're getting handed, if we get voted into city council, a city that's in much better shape than it was back in the day. And that goes to everyone in every department. And yes, I will pat Eric on the back. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Coaster.
Thank you for your time this evening. I appreciate your time and consideration of my candidacy for a city council position. I see the role of city council as an opportunity to serve the Fostoria community, a community I love so much. Part of my pride and love for this town, I believe, comes from contributions I've seen my family make over the years here in Fostoria. My mom, Mary Van Kuren, is a teacher and a volunteer. My uncle, Rick Lonsway, is a social worker for the elderly. I really could go on and on. As I mentioned previously, my husband and I are opening a small business in town. One step on that journey for me was to take part in Co-Starters, a program available at the Fostoria Learning Center. One of the activities early on in this 10-week course was to tell our story. I'd like to share just a portion of my story as it has evolved. I am a daughter. I come from Mary and Tom Van Kuren. I've been to Toledo and North Ridgeville. Fostoria is my home. I think I was blessed to have come from a compassionately serving yet funny family. I'm a granddaughter. I come from Irene and Cliff Lonsway. We've been to Cary and New Riggle. Fostoria has been our home since the 1870s. I know through community we are stronger. I'm an inclusion advocate. I come from the education field. I've been the student and I've been the teacher. Inclusion is my home. I see the benefit of each of us having an open heart for seeing and hearing from those different from ourselves. I am a Fostorian. I come from here. I've lived in Toledo and Cleveland. Fostoria is truly my home. I'm a candidate for Fostoria City Council, hoping to serve. From my family and from my work, I've learned the value of service, appreciation for the youth, and the importance of open communication and collaboration. I'm seeking the opportunity to use these experiences to help support Fostoria as it continues to seek positive outcomes for all Fostorians. Once again, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Mr. Hall.
A final thank you goes out for holding this event and my invitation. The city of Fostoria has so much to offer, and too many people cut it short. We need more positivity about all the wonderful things happening here. 5 years ago, I moved to Fostoria, and now I am married with my first child on the way. I have planted my roots into this community, and now I am looking to grow even more. Along with living in Fostoria, I work here, worship here, and even volunteer as much as I can. I am now hoping to serve Fostoria in another way as city councilman at large. If given the opportunity, I will work tirelessly to support local businesses, first responders, and improve city infrastructure. If not already, I urge you to get out and register to vote for the upcoming May primary and the November general election. I would appreciate your support in voting Braden Hall for city council at large.
Thank you. Mr. Cassidy.
I think I pretty much exhibited what I stand for. One thing I didn't mention earlier, and I'll do it quickly, this financial recovery we're in is obviously a major topic. I advocate getting out of financial emergency as quickly as possible with one caveat, and that is when we get out, we stay out. I have the patience to see this go an extra year or two if we have to ensure that we stay out of the financial emergency and move on. This community of people that are very giving and unselfish. No one's a stranger in Fostoria. I respectfully ask for your support, and in return, I promise my continued focus on making every decision based upon one question: is it good for Fostoria? I served a partial term, and I'm finishing up a full term as councilman at large. I humbly ask your support and vote to continue one more term in this position. Thank you very much for your attention and your attendance.
Thank you. Let's show our round of appreciation for the council candidates. Just a few closing notes. First of all, I would like to sincerely thank you all for attending this evening. We did have many questions submitted. We could not address them all with the number of candidates that we had and the time frame to operate this forum. We did do our best to try to touch every subject that we could with the compilation of questions. However, I am very encouraged in the most recent races for our local government that we have candidates running. I think we can all look back at a time when there weren't people running for office. And when we look at communities across the state of Ohio and across the nation, if you have contested races at the local level, it's a sign of a vibrant community. And I hope you take that with you because it's extremely important, and we are in a vibrant community. And I would also encourage you all to reach out and have conversations, face to face. I think each and every candidate up here this evening at one point mentioned open, honest communication. So they've expressed their willingness, and I would encourage you, if you have questions, if you have things that weren't addressed, please reach out. Please speak to those people that can answer your questions or get those questions answered for you. So please remember, get out and vote in the May 3rd primary and again in November. And also just a friendly reminder, City Council meets twice a month, the first and third Tuesday. Get out, get involved, ask questions. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.